Shows how important.
Come here and play well.
But for you, where does the culture feel?
Well, you just watched it.
Nice to meet you, Jewelz and Gabby. From my experience, the teams with the best culture have been the teams who have put the win in front of everything. You know, they sacrifice their stats, they sacrifice whatever it is for the team. The victory is the most important thing. And, you know, it's a very easy sign of bad culture when you see players, you know, sulking because we won, but they went 3 for 12, you know. And that's hard because of course everyone wants to play well, but I think that's why there's not a good culture everywhere. You know, it takes a lot to check yourself and say, hey, you know, what's the most important thing right now? That we won the game.
What is it like overseas?
It depends on the club because the clubs differ way more than they do in the WNBA. I think in the WNBA, for the most part, everyone kind of has the same. I mean, my experience in Chicago is a lot different than here. We didn't have half the stuff that we have here. Like, we didn't even have the stuff that I had in Hungary, for example, what I had in Chicago. But my first team in France had nothing compared to Chicago, you know what I mean? So it differs between clubs. I mean, if you're on a big club like an ECAD, a Chopron, a Fenerbahce, you have everything at your disposal. But for those smaller clubs, it can be difficult. As far as culture, I think sometimes stereotypes can get in the way overseas in Europe. You know, they see the Americans and they assume that they're superstar Americans. You know, they assume that the superstars are just there to get their money, just there to take their shots, which maybe sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's not as well. And sometimes that can have an effect on the culture. But for the most part, I think in Europe, it's very much collective, you know. It's more a bit team basketball, which I think, like here in Seattle, I think we have that for sure. It's easier to flow with our offense, but it's not necessarily like that on all teams in the W. Absolutely, we still need pride, and I think that's one of the coolest things about the WNBA is just like we're always kind of the front runner on these kind of social justice issues. And I think these past few months, the American system, the government has kind of taken steps back, unfortunately, and it feels like we're going back in time. So now I think we need these kinds of things more than ever, you know, just to remind like, hey, we're not going to be silent on these issues. We're not going to back down despite all of this, you know. So I think pride is very important.
First of all, let me say I'm grateful at this juncture in my career to come to a place with such an established culture in so many ways. And I don't mean that the work is done. It's just continuous, and it's from top to bottom. And I think that's how it starts, and it permeates down because of people that they choose from management to head coaches to staff, but it's also the people behind the scenes. But then there's an extra layer to the players. You don't have to have as much buy-in if you go to those players who already have that innate. So you're just growing it. You don't waste that time. And I think that's what Seattle has done. That's like with a lot of successful organizations. They don't have to restart it. They're not reinventing. They're just raising the bar. I just think it's about people, relationships. And that sounds so cliche, right? But it's the depth and how broad those relationships are. And they don't end when the careers end. A hardship player feels the same as a 20-year vet like Sue Bird because it's real. And I think that goes back to what we started with. Like there's only so much coaches can control. We know that, but we know we're judged for everything. And there's an awesome responsibility and we're okay with that. But when you know the top has your back, the outside has your back, the bottom, then you can just do you. And I think that's something, even when Seattle had their rebuild, people forget about that, right? Because they stuck to it and just kept growing. So I think that's a lesson in that leadership portion of it. Yeah, there's a need. The fact that, you know, that's your third question in the middle of our season, right? Anyone who's truly committed to equality in every sense of the word will feel that any portion of support for a marginalized group is enough. You can't make up for it in a month, in a year, or decades. Seattle's top of the list. They're not checking off a box, they're just living here. And you feel it. It's not just talked about, it's lived. So, you know, for me, it's like, hell, it's Pride Month every day around here. And that's what it should look like, and that's what it feels like here.
That's awesome. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
It's real, man. I'm like...